Hello, you are listening to the WrestleWatch podcast, the only wrestling podcast that focuses exclusively on free agency in the world of professional wrestling. I am Doug.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan here on my Saturday is a little bit rainy. How's yours going there, Doug?
Oh, it's actually pretty nice. It's a little chilly. I think it's like 39 right now, but it's gonna
Oh,
warm up into the 50s today. It's just because it's 9 a.m. right now here, so it's still a little early. But it's very sunny out. The temperature was in the 70s like earlier in the week, but now we're looking at 50s and 60s for the next 7 days or so.
huh.
But,
Well,
but I'll take it. It's April. You never
yeah,
know
it's
what you can
April,
get.
and you have a nice weekend planned for you. You got Dynasty tomorrow, right? That you're going to?
Yes, I have Dynasty tomorrow. Today I'm going to, well, today is my daughter's birthday party. So
Oh, that's nice.
we're going to spend it at the round one. I don't know if you have any round ones by you.
Oh, I'm familiar with the round one.
Yes, she's a big fan of the round one. She loves the round one. Yeah, so we'll be doing that with the arcade and the karaoke rooms and all that. So that'll be my afternoon. And yes, tomorrow I will be on an Amtrak train to St. Louis
Mm.
to go to Dynasty. So
Ah,
that'll be a fun trip as well.
yeah,
I
that
think
sounds.
I've been
Go ahead.
traveling a lot. I've been traveling a lot for wrestling lately,
Yeah.
and I think I need to pull it back a little bit because I went to North Carolina for Revolution.
Oh, yeah, I was there too. Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'm doing this. Although this is nowhere near as bad as my 2019. My 2019, I was like, if I had to really had to sit down and think about it, I probably traveled to the point where I would need airfare maybe like 6 times that whole year for
Uh,
wrestling.
I did it twice last year for wrestling. I flew and went to All In, and then I almost went to All Out on a flight, but I was like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. I got to be prudent about this. So I delayed it until flying up to Full Gear instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes it's not even necessarily about, hey, don't spend so much money on this. Sometimes it's just like, you gotta pace yourself. Otherwise
yeah.
it's gonna make not be special anymore. And I think I'm approaching that where it's like I need to pull it back.
Well, what are you looking forward to with that show?
I think that I know everyone is looking at Danielson and Ospreay, obviously, but I genuinely think that Pac and Okada has a chance to steal the whole thing.
Mhm.
That is going to be my hot take. That I
Yeah,
think that that's going to be the match of the night, and I
yeah.
think that a lot of people aren't talking about that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that match goes, especially because it's going to be undercard Okada defense. It's been a while since we've seen that kind of match. I mean, I believe it was his last real singles match against Tanahashi in New Japan was undercard, sure, but like it'll be interesting to see how he, books his matches in this new environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Just especially now that he's left New Japan and now he's in AEW, and I don't know how they're going to necessarily book him.
Yeah, we'll get into possibly some people who might debut at Dynasty later, or what the rumor mill is saying about the Motor City Machine Guns. We'll get to them later on in this episode. First, we wanted to go over some things about the developments regarding Rossy Ogawa's new promotion, which I suppose this is the new weekly segment, Rossy Talk. Um, I don't know if we can trademark that one, but we can try. Uh,
Perhaps RossyWatch.
Watch, yes. Where's the music for that? There it is. Rossy Watch. Do 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 over the ticker. Yeah. So Rossy Ogawa had a press conference this past week. It was streamed by Wrestle Universe, which is the
That's
medium.
Cyber fights for like Noah and Tokyo Joshi Pro and DDT and Ganbari, I think is on there. Yeah, they've been
Yeah,
expanding it seems. Yeah.
yeah. There's a few promotions on there now that are not just the Cyberfight promotions. So this is kind of an expansion of their portfolio by the announcement by Rossy Ogawa of his new promotion, which he is calling Marigold. I'm trying to remember what the full title of it.
I could tell you exactly what it is because
Oh,
I could say firsthand. I will say this: it is incredible the name because it is Dream Star Fighting Marigold.
oh yeah. Yeah, now I remember that because it
Yes.
has Star in it, which is fun.
Yes. I'm amused by the idea of Dream Star Fighting. I don't know why. That's a great name. I will say that. They
Mhm.
should have just called the promotion Dream Star Fighting, to be completely honest.
That would have been such a better name, honestly,
Yes.
but no, we have to call it Marigold. I don't understand the name, but I don't understand a lot of things about what's happening with this promotion. Doug, what are your thoughts? Where are your things going with all of this?
Well, I think we didn't, as I said, this happened after we recorded last. So
Yes.
a
So
lot of this,
this,
we have to kind of backtrack a lot with this. So the promotion was announced on, I think, what, April 14th?
yes, it was technically April 14th by Japanese time. So it was our Monday when it
Yes.
happened.
So when that happened, Rossy had a press conference with a number of talent that were there, and a lot of them were names that we expected. A
Hmm.
lot of them were Stardom talent. So we had Julia there, who everyone was kind of expecting that, where she's. Then we also had Utami, another one we expected. Mirai was there, who I think we also expected to jump.
Yes.
Nanai Takahashi, who was actually a co-founder of Stardom,
Hmm.
was there as well. So, but obviously she's going to have close ties with Rossy, so that's not surprising. And then Mai Sakurai, who I feel like has been pushed well over the last year and a half in Stardom,
Hmm.
as a mid carder and occasional upper mid carder. And then the other one is Victoria Yuzuki. And then now Ishikawa as well, who I'm not super familiar with. I think she was newer. And then a number of people from the Act Rest Girls promotion, which is Act Yasukawa's promotion, I believe. I think it's hers. I know she's in it. I don't know if she owns it directly, but obviously she has a history with Stardom. If anyone remembers the Ghastly match where the
Yeah.
one wrestler was shot on and ended up having to basically nearly end their career. Uh,
Hmm.
that was her in that Stardom match. But a number of other girls from that promotion jumped as well and are at least affiliated with Marigold in one way or another.
Yeah.
And there were reports that, this looked like I did this looked like poaching on their part, and it sounds like a lot of the people from the promotion felt that way. So once again, we're hearing similar things that we heard last time
Well,
in terms of Rossy.
one of those people, who is it? Natsumi Sumikawa. I believe that
Yes,
she is the current champion for Act Act Girls, right?
I I'll be honest. I've maybe seen like one or two Act Rest Girls matches in my life, so I'm not 100% sure, but I would not be surprised.
Yeah, just looked it up. Yes, she is the current champion,
Yeah.
and she is one of the people that is leaving that promotion to go to this new Marigold promotion.
Yeah, and okay. So this is what we got right now. So Marigold is launching, Rossy is building up this roster of talent, and I think the initial feeling from people who were following this was that it didn't necessarily seem like the all-star roster that people were expecting. I,
Yeah.
I think that I think there was a lot more rumblings of people leaving that didn't leave. I think most notably we had Suri, who we thought was going to go as well. She stayed. I
Hmm.
think there was talks of them trying to get Azumi and Starlight Kid, and that didn't happen. So just based off of that, I think they have a solid
Yeah.
roster to start for sure. But then the other news that came out was we saw Io Sky, the
Yeah.
former Io Shirai, and Kairi Sane, former Kairi Hojo. There was indications that there's going to be some type of working relationship between Marigold and WWE, and
Yes.
that those two in particular would be willing to go back and forth and work Marigold shows and WWE shows.
Yeah, it was interesting in the phrasing on one of the articles about Julia this week in particular, because it was mentioning how she is signed to WWE, she is signed to Marigold. Once she goes over to WWE full time, she will quote, I think the quote was that she will exclusively be able to work for Marigold in Japan, which is
Yeah.
a really interesting way of phrasing things and a really interesting way of of designing things.
Yeah, I don't think they said that she signed with WWE yet, to be clear.
Okay,
I think it's just there was like, and they think they worded it like an agreement, or that,
understood. Okay.
yeah,
But yeah, it's such that it seems that there definitely is some sort of agreement then also between WWE and Rossy Ogawa regarding the talent for this Marigold promotion and the sorts of people that they'll be bringing in from the West.
yeah, I think so. I think this is maybe the first steps we're seeing in something where a actual working relationship between another promotion and WWE is going to happen.
Yeah,
And I
it
think that
yeah.
I think one of the things that's notable in this is that it does seem like it's not just going to be, oh, it's not going to be like a TNA situation where, oh, we're going to let your champ come on our show once a
Hmm.
year and, lose. Which is essentially the TNA relationship. Uh, Even though, and I don't think that that's not exactly a working relationship in my mind. This seems like
No.
a situation where they're actually going to send talent to Marigold and specifically Io
Yeah.
Sky and Kairi Sane. And we saw a little bit of that with Bloodsport, I guess. This WrestleMania weekend where we had, you know, Shayna Baszler there and was it Charlie Dempsey? Is that his name? Right? That's Regal's kid.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Regal's kid
Regal's
went
good.
there.
Well,
Which might be a situation more so just, it's a one shot, they were
yeah.
in town for Mania weekend and they didn't have anything to do with them. I don't know that that was necessarily the start of something. It might turn into that, but this obviously feels a little different.
Yes. So the big difference that I'm seeing between this and those kinds of things is those were one-offs for singular people kind of a thing, you know? Whereas this relationship seems to be, well, we're going to let some NXT trainees and some high-profile folks from the main roster go over there. We're going to allow for certain of the talents that are in Marigold to come back over to WWE. And also Rossy's comments where he's been asked about what's the relationship with WWE. He was also asked about the cyber fight relationship. He made it clear that, they don't have they have a good relationship, a positive relationship with Cyberfight, but they're not part of Cyberfight. It just so happens that they are on the Wrestle Universe streaming service. But with WWE, he was being a little bit cagey about it, didn't want to really say specifically what relationship, if there is a relationship in particular. He said that things could develop into the future. I believe one of the translations said something about a ranch of sorts, which might be a farm for WWE. I'm not sure if the translation came across correctly on that because it came across as ranch, which seems a weird phrasing. Uh, but it seems like that there's much more here about what could be this relationship between Marigold and WWE than WWE has had with really any major wrestling promotion for quite some time. Of course, they have their, affiliate work with FCW, which became NXT kind of, and OVW, but this is feels a little bit different, if that makes sense.
It does. And going off that, I think some comments were made that
Mm-hmm.
do raise some 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 red flags on some issues. One in
Yes.
particular, I think it was Yuzuki, who was former Stardom talent. I think one of the things that she was quoted saying is that the promotion is going to be looking for talent between the ages of 13 and 30 that are unmarried, which
Yes.
which is a very idle thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it does not come across well. And on top of that, it doesn't come across well in a company that is currently trying to have a working relationship with WWE and WWE, a company that's currently being sued over sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this was also echoed last night on a stream by Kenny Omega. He was asked on his thoughts about Rossy Ogawa. He was, quoting how they're looking for girls, he said 13 to 21 that are not married. And he pointed out that we already know he puts people into revealing swimsuit calendars and things of that such. And he pulls himself from saying anything more. But it seems that like there is a feeling amongst some that this is a little bit shady and weird of a thing. It might be a little bit about the Eider culture stuff, but it still is quite odd how they are looking for all of that right now.
But it's funny because he said like he doesn't want to say anything more. But I don't know if you saw, but there were later clips where he said more. He basically said, from someone who lived it and breathed it, who had a very close friends in the industry, and the information that they know, he says he's just going to leave it at that. But then he did elaborate. He says, for that individual, someday people will know the truth. A lot of the
Hmm.
higher ups in Japan, they know exactly about the business he's up to and what he's been up to for decades.
That's worrisome, to
Yep.
put it lightly. And as you said, yeah, it's not the kind of relationship that WWE might want to have in this current moment as an individual, as an organization.
And then, well, then he ended it with one final comment, which I
Okay.
think speaks to that maybe this isn't going to be completely open door both ways with this Marigold relationship between WWE and Marigold. If we're to believe Kenny's comments, because Kenny's last comment before he ended this discussion was, "I'm with Asuka, always have been."
Yeah, and Asuka does not have a lot of love to the people that started Stardom.
No, yeah, Asuka and Rossy very famously do not like each other.
Hmm.
And one of the things that started Asuka's infamy was railing against the idol culture within Joshi wrestling,
Hmm.
in a very Jerry Maguire-esque public letter. So this does not surprise me at all. So I don't know if I will say this: if I don't know how Asuka feels about this still to this day, she has not commented. I do think it is noteworthy that when they talked about people going from WWE to Marigold, Kairi Sane and Io Sky were the only two mentioned.
Hmm.
They didn't. They made a point not to mention, other people that might fit.
Yeah,
And I'm trying. Well, I'm trying to think who else in
I don't think that
WWE right now has a prior Stardom relationship.
I don't think there's anybody else currently on the main roster. I think B Priestley had time there,
Oh
or
yeah,
Blair Davenport.
B Priestley had a lot of time there. She was
Yeah.
the top champ at one point, so that she'd be one. And honestly, I would kind of be surprised if she doesn't, unless she has like some poor relationship with Rossy. But I would be
Hmm.
just based off of what I know, I would be very surprised if that's the case because I know
Hmm.
that the longest time, B Priestley was like Rossy's golden goose over there. He loved her.
Hmm.
And so, but based off of these, and here's the thing. I mean, Kenny obviously was dancing around things.
Yeah.
I've heard things. I kind of think I know what he's referring to, but in a similar way that he doesn't want to talk about it because it's not his story. I don't want to do it either. But I will say this. I have, I'm going to be careful how I say this. I do know of Western promotions that have had working agreements with Stardom and then abruptly stop them because of things that came to their knowledge and just from them their relationship working with Rossy that just rubbed them really the wrong way and they felt that they didn't want to be a part of that. So I'll just leave it at that.
It seems like that you might have heard similar things to Kenny had heard.
It's a good chance. Yeah.
And it's intriguing to me just to point out that usually Kenny Omega's streams when he gets asked questions about people, he is usually tries to be positive or just not make comments that are, you know, possibly explosively newsworthy, to put it one way.
Oh my,
Uh,
especially when you think of like the things that like Jim Cornette has said about him
yeah,
or that are really beyond the pale. And he
yeah,
tries to be nice to him and just be cordial. The fact that
yeah.
he is not being cordial here says a lot.
It does. It really does. So I think that this is something that we'll be keeping an eye on as things developed here with Marigold, specifically with if some talent from the US go over there, if maybe they don't go there again. We'll see as this develops with Marigold.
I'm sure we'll have more news and discuss it in the next weekly RossyWatch segment at this point.
That's good to hear. RossyWatch has been provided to you by viewers like you. Thank you all for listening to RossyWatch. We'll be right back to WrestleWatch in a moment, though, once we take a little break here. We're going to get through the changes to the tier list. As we mentioned, Motor City Machine Guns is going to be one of those things that we're going to talk about. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast where people follow what's going on in the free agency market of professional wrestling. I am Ryan here. My coffee cup is not as full as Doug's is at this point.
No, probably not, but that's okay. We'll get through this segment, and then after we do that, we can go get some more coffee before the final one.
Good. So we're going to be going through the tier list for the changes that happened this week on the tier list. Up at the top of the tier list, something has changed that we talked about last week, of course, which was that Tama Tonga has debuted in WWE. He made his formal debut on SmackDown last week, where he is introduced as the newest member of the Bloodline, which is now kind of being run by Solo Sikoa. It's an interesting angle, and it's an interesting position for Tama Tonga to go from essentially the mid-card of New Japan up to the main card top storyline that's existed for the past 4 years in WWE. So great news for Tama Tonga, I think.
Yeah, and as I said, we don't really have a whole lot to really add to this. I think we talked about it a lot, but I do want to say, once again, another S tier that has signed somewhere and has correctly jumped. So once again, the committee got their finger on the pulse, nailed that one. So congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, we keep track at the end of the year of which ones that we were right about and which we were wrong about, just to look at accuracy. And most times we're right, so that's good.
Yes.
Now speaking of Tama Tonga, though, there is one interesting little part of this story that could be developing and spinning off further into something more. During Fightful's reporting of Tama Tonga's signing, they also mentioned that in 2023, WWE had been talking to Tama Tonga and Hikuleo. They also pointed out that Hikuleo's contract with New Japan will be running out in June. And interestingly enough, at Windy City Riot, the strong belts were dropped by El Phantasmo and Hikuleo. This has had the committee wanting to put Hikuleo onto the tier list, and he is debuting on the tier list in D tier, which means that we have around a 25 to 40% certainty, a confidence rating of him moving on further afield from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Another person that just got added along with them was the return of El Phantasmo. He only took a week off the tier list, but he's back at it. He's back in F tier. Doug, how are you feeling about all of this with El Phantasmo and Hikuleo?
I think Hikuleo is someone that obviously would make a lot of sense. He's a very tall guy. He is someone that obviously has the family relationships and ties in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why people would move him, want him on the list. And he's debuting at D, which means, he's leaning towards not jumping at this time, or at least in the immediate future, which I think is fair. I don't know that there's any sign that he's immediately going to pop over. I think that there's this idea that WWE is trying to just scoop up every single Pacific Islander whose like contract is up and put them in this bloodline story. And I know I get that because everyone is like saying, oh, here comes Jacob Fatu, here comes Zilla, here comes Hikuleo. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to be that. Having said that, I understand that the rumblings are there, but I just don't see him going immediately. So I agree that the D tier is appropriate.
Yeah.
And for El Phantasmo, he's on F tier. I think that it's fine that because I see people are going kind of going back and forth between F and just having him off right now, and I understand that that's fine. But I think
Hmm.
it was there in the report it was noted that it's like he's out of people think his contract is expired right now and he might be working just paper date, which
Yeah, yeah,
a
it
lot of
said
people
that its
yeah.
contract expired in January and they haven't gotten an update. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think based off of that report, I think some people felt comfortable voting F just because, you know, they feel that he's probably going to end up somewhere.
Hmm.
And there's a chance that that somewhere won't be New Japan anymore. There's not a whole lot of, buzz and people, throwing money offers at him right now that we're hearing about. So because of that, I think we're keeping him at F, and I think that's appropriate and fine. I
Yeah.
would have been fine keeping him off personally, but I'm fine with him being on F. I don't think it's a big difference.
Yeah, I would have been fine keeping him off because there's not really much smoke or buzz about. I mean, there's a little bit of smoke, supposed, with just that his contract has expired, probably, but there's not a lot of buzz about him going anywhere else. When we look at other people in F tier, almost every single one of them has a buzz about where they could be going to. Like you look at Hook. Hook we just added last week. There's a buzz about him leaving AEW and going somewhere else. Jeff Hardy, there's a little bit of a buzz. MJF, there's always that until he comes back, until we hear for certain that he's resigned, there will always be that buzz. El Phantasmo, I don't feel like has that buzz about him of, yeah, XYZ promotion is really interested in him. That's not a comment on El Phantasmo's abilities or anything. I love El Phantasmo. He's possibly one of the most over baby faces in New Japan right now, but there just really isn't as much buzz about him going anywhere else in particular. I would have been fine with him being off. It's okay that he's an F tier. It's low confidence, so it's not anything crazy. To contrast that, somebody that is very high confidence right now was also added this week, and that is Erick Rowan. Some very interesting developments happened over the past week with him, kind of out of nowhere. He dropped his indie belts that he was holding from a few promotions there, and he also, I believe, PWI Insider reported that he was spotted in Pittsburgh, potentially for a physical from WWE. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful asked about it to WWE if Erick Rowan was going to be coming in. They responded, "quote You're good at your job." So, Doug, what's going on with Erick Rowan?
I think he's going to WWE. I think it's pretty clear that they're probably going to do something with Bo Dallas
Mm-hmm.
to kind of, as like a spiritual successor to Bray Wyatt's whole persona. And I think that him going in makes all the sense in the world. And I voted for S tier to be completely honest. I went
Mm.
I went full S. So him being at A is fine though, but I expect him to be within the company within the next month, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. I voted for A just because I haven't seen anything that is certain of he is definitely signed. Kind of talk, but I don't mind people that voted S on him in this circumstance because it's every single sign and tea leaf is pointing to specifically him coming back to WWE right now very quickly.
Hmm.
So that makes sense. Somebody else that was added this week was Natalya. Fightful reported that her contract is up in the next few months and talks have not taken place yet at all. What are you feeling about Natalya there, Doug?
I think this is. I don't put a whole lot of stock into the talks haven't talked yet because or haven't started yet because this is now just par for the course. This is just how this operates in this company. It seems where they're not trying to get stuff done early. They kind of wait until the last minute. Maybe it's a game
Mm-hmm.
of chicken. Maybe it's a negotiating tactic, but that doesn't that doesn't surprise me based off of what we've seen with literally every other person so far that's
Yeah,
contract is up. Having said that, I do not think she's going to go anywhere.
yeah.
I feel like, I'm someone who doesn't believe in lifers, but she's about as close to a lifer as you can get, I think. I don't think that she's someone who would necessarily want to jump off somewhere else. Maybe like to do, I could see her wanting to do like one-offs here and there. I could see her wanting to work a blood sport, or maybe
Hmm.
she'll be someone who'll take a Marigold match. But the idea that she is going to, at this point in her career, completely switch locations to try something else, I don't know. She never really struck me as someone who is trying to, and I don't mean this in a to say that she's not good or anything like that, but she never struck me as someone who is really trying to branch out and explore other options.
Hmm.
She just seems like she's very comfortable where she's at.
Yeah.
She's respected in WWE. She's treated as a living legend within the women's division,
Yeah.
which I think is more than she would get anywhere else. So I just I don't and then obviously the most important thing is going to be like money and finances. And I don't know that like someone like AEW is necessarily going to pay her more than WWE was going to pay her, because I just don't know that there is a whole lot of upside in bringing her in terms of business. So I think that, staying at F tier is fine, especially just since her contract is coming due and they haven't even talked about negotiations yet.
Hmm.
And so there's always obviously an option, a possibility that this new endeavor-owned WWE is going to lowball people to the point where they're insulted
Yeah.
and they can go somewhere else. That's always a possibility. So for that alone, I think F tier is appropriate.
I think F tier is entirely appropriate too. There, of course, over the WrestleMania weekend, Natalya went to the Stardom show. She got a photo with the new president of Stardom, Okada. So it's possible that she might be having some interest in that kind of work, and I think that that would be a great thing for her to try out at least once, to have that kind of run, to go do international dates and indie dates and things like that. But I do agree that I think that her highest value location is probably WWE. I can't see another promotion valuing her as much as WWE does. I mean, yeah, as you said, she's presented and considered within the division as a legend, and I think that's an appropriate way to look at her from how long she's been. She's the longest signed woman on the roster at this point. She was in there back when it was the Divas Championship. So she's been there for a while and has put in her dues. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised by her resigning whatsoever. I think that WWE should value that also for longevity's sake. But we've seen how they've been dealing with some people of that kind of vintage recently. Like people like the former Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, where yeah, they were upper mid carders for their entire career. Sometimes got the world title, but they were treated a little bit poorly on the way out, I feel, for how long that they put in the dues with the company. And hopefully, I would say that I hope that Natalya gets a good deal, and I hope that WWE respects her and her value. I know that SRS mentioned that wherever she goes, her husband Tyson Kidd, TJ Wilson, will likely go as well. He's one of, if not the one of the best bookers, I would say, in WWE right now, as far as producing matches. Is highly trusted in that role. So I would be kind of surprised if he leaves WWE right now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that for sure. I
Mm.
mean, yeah, I feel comfortable that keeping her at F tier. Will I be shocked if she goes? Actually, yeah, I would be shocked. I'll be honest. Yeah, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if she goes. So we'll just leave it at that. Next, we have Nikki Bella.
Yes. So Nikki Bella had some interesting comments this past week regarding AEW. She was speaking on Nikki and Bree's show. She said that she put some serious consideration into joining AEW not too long ago. This was in the context of seeing Mercedes Moné's debut, and something that a line that stuck with her. She says, "quote Here we're going to make the evolution worldwide." And this is still quoting from Nikki. I was like, they do. It goes into many leagues. It's what she means. It doesn't have to be in just one place. It can be all these places where all these women are wrestling. And she said that she was very close to just calling Tony Khan in that minute and trying to get on the roster. There was some pause from her about all of this due to the schedule with having a kid and everything like that, which was something that Bree knows about as the wife of Bryan Danielson, who is winding down his career as he's trying to get back to the promise he made to his kid about retiring. uh, so then Tony Khan was asked about this. It was on a podcast called Battleground Podcast. He was asked about Nikki. He said, of course, they would be interested in her, and she was a great star, and all those kinds of flowery things. It wasn't anything concrete that Tony Khan was saying, and this is kind of just interest from Nikki Bella more than it is any other kinds of reports that are going on. But it was enough for our committee to look at wanting to add her to the tier list and F tier.
I thought it was really funny the way that she went about it because this to me felt like so the way Nikki Bella like makes this comment publicly saying like I almost called Tony Khan. I almost did it. And then afterwards Tony Khan is like, "Oh yeah, I love Nikki Bella." Or said something really flowery about Nikki Bella.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost like these two were dancing around this thing and neither one wanted to make the first move.
Yeah. Well,
Like this was like Nikki Bella hinting that, hey, give me a call because I will talk to you.
yeah, the phrasing from Tony, I found the quote here is if Nikki Garcia, Bella, ever wanted to come into AEW, I would be very interested in that. I would think the world of her. I have so much respect for Nikki and Brie. They're like family to us because Brian is like a part of my family. And that means Brie and Nicole part of the family. So I have respect for both of them. And Nikki, if Nikki was interested in coming to AEW, we would love to have her here anytime. I could see it happening. I'm not positive it will happen. I wouldn't be shocked if it does happen.
Yeah.
Uh,
This felt like they were feeling each other out.
yes.
I'm
Yeah.
fine keeping it at F tier, and being at F tier until we hear anything more. But
Mhm.
I just based off of that, I mean, if they both are serious, I could definitely see her doing some type of something in AEW. So I wouldn't be surprised if this moves up further from F tier in the coming weeks. Just
It does remind me about, I think it was on a podcast this week. Mariah May was interviewed and she was asked about changing up her finisher for AEW. She now has one that's called Mayday. It's some kind of, brainbustery kind of thing. And guess what? She mentioned that it reminded her of the Bella Buster. And she said that it was a nice diva finish. So there are some teas. There are some little breadcrumbs that are coming out this week of people mentioning back and forth about Nikki Bella and AEW. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. It is interesting because we've mentioned this before about Bryan Danielson with his family that he's building and the promise that he made to his daughter. We mentioned it when we talked about Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch about how they're transitioning into having a growing family and how that could affect where they are looking at both of them for free agency. It was a big thing for Will Ospreay when he signed with AEW was the ability to have some flexibility with growing a family and starting a family. So there seems to be some common themes about the things that people mention as a positive with AEW and the attraction that people have to AEW in that regard.
we need to talk about the next one because Drew McIntyre, who I just wanted before we go over where he's at now, we just need, do you know that meme where it shows like the line chart and it's like we are so back, it's over.
Yes,
And it keeps going back and forth.
he is
That that
that.
that he is that. He's all over this thing.
Yeah, so that this could be a different segment from RossyWatch. It's just DrewWatch every single week.
He was at F tier last
Mhm.
week, and now he's moved up to D. So he has run the gambit from S tier all the way down to F tier, and now he's moving up to D tier again. So this is all within the span of what, 2 months?
Yeah, he's gone every single tier. I think at this point, I don't remember if it was S, but he definitely felt that way in my heart at the very least.
Yeah, he was definitely A at one point.
Oh yeah, the news this month or this week is that his contract is up in a month.
Yeah,
It's been confirmed that that is the case. So it's kind of funny that they put him on all the branding and everything for the Glasgow show, Class of the Casual, and he is not currently signed for that show.
yeah. It does say a lot that all of this is happening with him. His contract is expiring a month. He refuses to sign a contract that is offered to him right now, and yet we have him at D tier and F tier, which are
Yeah,
the tiers that say that he is most likely going to stay. So It's just and I agree with that statement. I agree.
Yeah,
I would have him at F or D right now probably. D is probably fine. F is fine too, but it's like one of those two. I wouldn't go any higher than that. And
yeah.
it's just really funny how everything is going right now where that's the situation where we keep going down to the wire and we're just like, he'll sign. He'll resign.
Well, I mean, part of it for me is that I'm not sure how much, and this is something that we'll get into with the next person here, Matt Hardy. I'm not sure how much of this is working, where part of his storyline right now is that he's kind of feuded with CM Punk, who famously walked out on the contract while having the belt and, then reappeared 2 weeks later. So it wasn't really that powerful, but still it's one of those things where I'm looking at it and thinking to myself, this could be a work. This all could be a work. I mean, why would you schedule a pay-per-view for Glasgow, Scotland if you're not going to have Drew McIntyre under contract? But at the same time, it doesn't surprise me because there are a number of people right now in WWE who are high-level talent who have not been re-signed or even offered a contract. So this does not surprise me. But at the same time, there's that momentary pause in me that's like, maybe.
We will see. That's all we
Uh,
can do with this.
so as I mentioned, the next person is Matt Hardy. He's gone up from D tier to C tier. He wants all of us to think that he is the most 50-50 person in the world right now, I think.
I mean, he might be, but it's not necessarily for like, great reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is he a 50-50? I think he could be a 50-50. I'd put him at a 50-50. I think C tier is appropriate. So, but the issue is it's not because he's this sought after free agent. It's just because I don't think AEW wants him that bad. And
Yeah.
because of that, I think WWE might want him a little bit and TNA might want him a decent amount. So it's a real mid off for people trying to secure the services of Matt Hardy right now,
Mm-hmm.
and him just trying to find out what's going to be the best deal. And it may not be that great of a deal. I mean, it's probably not going to be anywhere close to what he's gotten in the past, just because I
Yeah.
think if he goes back to TNA, that's a been there, done that. WWE is going to be the same thing. He'd probably be in this Bo Dallas group.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously in AEW, I don't, I respectfully to Matt Hardy, but I have not been interested in literally anything he did his entire AEW run, like not a single thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think any of the stuff he did has really set the world on fire there. And I don't think anything worked. I think the only thing people maybe liked was that Stadium Stampede. And other than that, it's
Oh, well, people love the firm deletion.
I barely remember that. And that's what I'm saying. It's just like, I don't know that they're necessarily going to be fighting over his services. So I think he's at C tier just because I think he could end up in a number of places. But it's not going to be a major thing. He'll be like a lower mid card guy no matter where he goes.
Yeah, that's generally how I'm feeling about it as well. Like he wants me to put him in C tier as well. Like I can't separate those two in my head sometimes. It's like I feel like from the all of the rumors and all of the likelihoods and of all of the reports, it does feel like he should be C tier, yes. But at the same time, he wants me to think that he is a C tier guy. He wants me to speculate about where he's going to go. So it really pulls at me a little bit because I'm like, no, what's the signal? What's the noise here? But I do agree with you that Matt services could be found other places. He might be valued more in other places than AEW at this point in his career. So yeah, I'm not sure where he's going to end up, which puts him in C tier essentially. But I think that there is enough interest for him in enough promotions right now.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
So another person that has moved on the tier list, they moved into C tier, is Sheamus. He moved down from the B tier to the C tier. Sheamus just returned to WWE this week. There were also some reports about his injuries building up and things of that nature. Doug, how are you feeling about Shamo right now?
I don't really change that much. I think he still has. I'm fine with him moving to C tier. He
Hmm.
probably has some time added to his deal just based off the injuries.
Hmm.
So I don't know when it's up exactly. So him moving to C tier is fine with me. I still think there's a good chance he might jump somewhere else. And once again, he feels like a guy who's going to take the money wherever offers him the best deal.
Yeah.
Will AEW give him a good offer when the time comes? I don't know. I mean, I kind of think he would fit well there. He could be a Blackpool Combat Club guy maybe, but but we'll see. I understand he moved down to C because he returned. He's back on screen now, so I think that's that alone kind of tells people a lot of things. But we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, I think it's just generally just a we'll see what happens kind of a guy right now. It was pretty clean that most of the people on the committee wanted to put him in C tier. I don't disagree with it. I think I also I was in favor of him being in C tier right now. It doesn't feel like a lot's changed, sure, but yeah, he came back. So yeah, you can't discount that.
So we got one more group to go over, and that's going to be the Motor City Machine Guns.
Yeah. So
They
this was slightly contentious among the committee. The Motor City Machine Guns, there was a report from Body Slam from Cassidy Haynes talking about their potentially going to AEW. Cassidy Haynes says, quote, after speaking to sources, I can now confirm that the Motor City Machine Guns are headed to AEW. Sources have told me that AEW and the Motor City Machine Guns are working on finalizing a deal. It was noted that the deal is not going to be finalized for a bit. However, the decision has been made and a deal will be worked out. Doug, I believe that you were on the side of putting them up in S tier. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I do. I think they're going to be debuting imminently in AEW. I would not be stunned to see them debuting tomorrow at
Mm-hmm.
Dynasty. I could absolutely see that. And if not tomorrow, I think within the next month they're going to be debuting. So based off of that alone, I think they are imminently showing up in AEW. Therefore, they are S tier.
Mm. So I voted A. My reason being that the report did made sure to point out that they have not actually finalized the deal yet, and that it could be for some time still that the deal is not finalized. So for me, that's that's the line between S and A for me
Mhm.
is that kind of a moment. Whereas when we compare it to say Jacob Fatu, we know for certain that he's signed to WWE. He just hasn't debuted yet. I don't personally have as much confidence and certainty about the fact that they have officially signed. So that's where I'm feeling on Motor City Machine Guns.
That's fair. And we'll find out, but I really have a strong feeling that they're going to be debuting sooner than we think. And
Mm.
Nick, I'm not saying that they're working Cassidy Haynes. Maybe they are a little bit and saying, but I do think it's possible that there's enough wiggle room with that, you know, not near being finalized. I mean, what does that mean relative to the time?
Yeah,
that could be 2 weeks as opposed to being tomorrow.
yeah.
I would still put that at S tier.
I think that that's all of the changes to the tier list for this week. I think we did have one other thing that we wanted to talk about, though. It was about the comments that were made with an interview between Maven and MXM. How about we get to that after a quick break? We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast, the podcast about wrestling free agency. This is Ryan here. And Doug, I think that we wanted to talk about the recent releases from WWE and also a little bit about an interview that Maven and MXM had where they were discussing the structure of deals over at WWE. Which part do you want to start with there?
Let's just touch on the names first, real quick, just the people who were released, just because I don't have a whole lot to say to it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they get added to the tier list next week, we can talk about them more. But for the most part, I don't think we need to discuss it too much now, but in WWE, five people have been released. The most prominent of them would be Jinder Mahal, who
Hmm.
former, WWE World Champion. Jinder Mahal, I would say he's the most high profile one. Then we also had Xia Li, Zion Quinn, Veer Mahan, and Sanga. Of these five, I would say that Jinder Mahal is the most high profile. Xia Li probably the second most. She was a main roster talent, even though she wasn't really pushed too much. And then the other three are, not that important. Veer is one who, was basically a punchline at this point. I don't know that we necessarily need to talk too much about them yet. I think I'd rather wait till we see if any of them get put on the tier list. I would be surprised. I will say this though, I would be surprised if Jinder Mahal doesn't get added to the tier list because I do think he does have some value. I mean, he's a former WWE World Champion. Xia Li, I don't know if she wants to continue, but the other three I don't really have a strong feeling on.
I would be surprised if any of them go on the tier list, honestly. I don't know where Jinder Mahal goes. So I don't know how I could give him any confidence rating right now of where he would go.
We'll see. We'll see. I could
Um,
see. I'm not saying he's gonna go somewhere, but I wouldn't be shocked if TNA picked him up.
that's fair. That's a fair point.
Depends what he's asking too. I mean, what is he willing to work for?
Yeah.
And I think that's the next thing we would kind of want to talk about a little bit, and that was this interview because I think this interview is probably one of the more interesting things that relates to what we talk about in this podcast, which is free agency. And this was in this interview with Maven, where we got really for the first time an understanding of how wrestlers' pay really works in WWE.
Mhm.
And this is with a system that they call the bucket system.
Yeah. So first, in the context, Maven described the way that he was paid when he was in WWE, which was essentially there was a guarantee and then a payment for appearances that was on top of the guarantee or the back end of the deal. So if he was appearing regularly every week on shows, if he was on pay-per-views, he would be getting a portion of the money from both the ticket gate and for pay-per-views, the pay-per-view buys. So he was describing it how he would have an incentive then when he came back from an injury to go and want to work because he was going to get paid more for going and actually working. The bucket system is what MXM were describing, which is similar on its head, but actually quite different once it gets described. So with this system, there is a guaranteed rate. So, for example, let's just say $100,000 over a year. But the way that WWE gets to that is they kind of have a bucket. So until you work enough shows to get up to $100,000 worth of payments, you get paid $100,000. Once you start working more than what the $100,000 is, then you actually get more payments. So in the entertainment industry, we would call this a versus deal, which is not abnormal in entertainment. But the interesting thing was that they said that everything goes into the bucket that WWE could pay them. So, for example, merchandise. If you bought a Maximum Male Model shirt, they would not see an actual added cent of that until they hit that cap that they were guaranteed to get paid. So they had either an incentive of not working and not getting merch sold because it doesn't matter, they're going to get paid the same no matter what, or you have to overwork yourself to ever make up that money. One of the other interesting things, of course, is that WWE has switched to a streaming model for their pay-per-views. It's a rarity now that you will see a lot of buys for their pay-per-views because of all their deals with Peacock, with other services for the WWE network internationally and upcoming with Netflix. So that means that WWE on the back end, they can do some funny money calculations to figure out how much money you should get paid for this pay-per-view appearance. There is not it seems like it's very obscured from the talent, from the way that they were explaining it. So, Doug, what are your thoughts? How are you feeling?
And then I think the other thing that was really telling was they mentioned that it was a very common tactic where once they were approaching their bucket cap,
Hmm.
suddenly they would stop getting booked on house shows and would stop getting dates so that they would not go over their bucket amount.
Yes.
And so just little games like that. And also, I think it's important. They didn't say it specifically, but I would assume that things like the Twitch deal are probably included in this as well. So all the money they get from Twitch would go in the bucket. So so I think, and this is sort of we saw this issue a while ago, a couple of years ago when they came up with this agreement with Twitch.
Yeah.
So if their Twitch money goes into the bucket, if they're making $100,000 in Twitch, they're not going to see any of that until they
They hit their
surpass the
cap.
bucket. And then
Yeah.
we saw situations. I mean, just me thinking right now, I'm thinking of someone like Dakota Kai, who was a big Twitch streamer,
Yep.
and then they kept her off TV for the longest time.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know if that's what happened, but it does make me think, okay, is this a situation where she's making so much money on Twitch that we know that we're gonna have to pay her out of pocket or past her bucket, and that's why we kept her off TV for so long. And she hasn't exactly been wrestling a lot,
Yeah.
even on TV. So maybe they use the funny money to go ahead and say, well, we're not going to pay you as much for this because you're just like standing at ringside. And
Yeah.
it does make me think like, okay, is this like as I'm listening to this, I'm just going through all the people who I see that maybe have an online presence and are making all the social media money as influencers, and suddenly they're not going to put them on shows because then that's going to screw up their pay structure. I think that's a very common thing.
Yeah. It's possible that the money from all of the partners that WWE has is also put in the bucket. So we're talking about Twitch, sure, but we're also talking about endorsements, possibly. So all those Slim Jim commercials, maybe those go in the bucket, you know? So it's like, what's your incentive then? You're not incentivized to do anything that will get you closer to the bucket unless you know that you're going to overfill it. Like,
Yeah, and it could be a situation where maybe Dakota Kai just re-signed a new deal in like
mhm,
March, where maybe her downside's a little bit lower, and now
yeah,
because of that, they feel a little bit more comfortable having her wrestle more, and
yeah.
that's why I mean, I understand there was some injuries and things like that as well, but it could be that that's why she didn't wrestle for a entire year.
Yeah. And of course this isn't the first part of this is not that rare in entertainment or in wrestling of having a versus deal. I believe the versus deal part of it is something that's similar to what AEW does of their contract says there's this is $100,000 for 50 matches in a year, and if you do 51 matches then we'll pay you at the higher rate. So that part's not super rare, but it's super weird to me, the second part about all the stuff with merch, because that is not the standard in the wrestling industry
No,
at all.
and just the arbitrary nature of deciding how much you get paid for each show.
Yes, that is also not standard.
Yeah.
Um,
They did note that apparently the Saudi shows are like massive paydays to the point
yeah,
where I got the impression that in some cases they could get their bucket filled on that one show alone.
it's possible. I mean, like it's one of those things where we know how much money they're making off the Saudi shows because it is a public figure, you know?
Yes.
Whereas with all the pay-per-views now it is or PLEs, it is unknown how many people actually were watching it on Peacock and how many people how does that convert into dollars, for WWE? Do they make the math based off of all the viewers over the year? It's just so there are so many possibilities of how they could calculate the money where it becomes extremely hard for a talent to understand what they're getting paid for, how much they're getting paid for that. They were saying how, they just get money put in their bank account and it's the same amount every single week because they haven't hit their bucket cap yet.
Yep.
So they have no idea if what they're doing is generating them more money unless they actually dig into it.
We'll see what happens. I think that as we go through these free agency situations, more and more of these issues might come arise. But if I had to guess, I'm guessing a lot of the people that we've been looking at lately as potential high profile jumps are probably people that they don't necessarily have to worry too much about the bucket cap, because I'm willing to bet that they have the leverage to negotiate pretty high downsides.
Yeah,
Including people like Kevin Owens, who on that last deal reportedly got a pretty sizable contract. I'm guessing that his situation is one where he's not necessarily concerned with the bucket.
no, I think that this is definitely something for people that are lower on the card, that are, thinking back to the way it used to be, where it was, if you appear on the pay-per-view, you get a bonus. Great. Now it's, if you appear on the pay-per-view, maybe sometime later in the year, you might get a little bit more money, but we might stop booking you so you don't get that more money. So,
Yeah.
so
Unless you're CM Punk. CM Punk apparently loves the buckets and not
you,
and hates the guaranteed money. It's wild. All right. Well, I think that's everything, right?
yeah, that's pretty much everything for this week of WrestleWatch. We have a busy weekend of big events coming up here with TNA's Rebellion and AEW's Dynasty. Maybe we'll see some debuts, some changes to the tier list next week based off of all of this movement. We will be back next week with more of the WrestleWatch podcast, the Wrestling Free Agency podcast. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms, YouTube, and the Twitters. Until then, this is Ryan.
I'm Doug.
All right, have a great week there.